Good to see you guys again. We have a super exciting session today on content repurposing, which is something that I find myself talking about more and more. It's I feel like a massive friction point for marketers constantly of staying on top of, repurposing content that you might have already produced, but then also editorial calendars. Like, I don't know why the editorial calendar has to be so complicated and so hard to keep track of when we have AI now, and the era of AI helps do this. And so today we're going to be focusing on a live build on Claude Code. The session is going to focus on dropping in a transcript from something else. This could be a sales call. This could be an interview with your founder or executive suite. This could be a webinar. This could be, anything that's pre-recorded or something that you already have access to, and use that to be able to repurpose it for, other channels. So whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, a thread, a newsletter, something on your site. And where I think this becomes really powerful, something that we do, is the same system we use. Twice a week, we do these 45-minute sessions where we cover a lot of good things. There's live, interaction from people in the audience. There's real questions coming up, and we run the same workflow. So every week, it pulls this transcript, it mines it for information, things that we talked about. What was the main takeaway? It looks at my voice profile. It understands how it can take the ideas that we discussed in today's session and separate them per platform, and then it saves it to the repurposing skill, and then that's going out to my other socials. So once we have this set up, all I need to do is show up to these 45-minute sessions, walk through a workflow, and content is automatically getting repurposed on all of the other platforms. And so the idea is, if we're always trying to work smarter, not harder. And if you're struggling to create content, but you're already building out these kind of longer pieces form of content, this is a great way to just, be able to run this automatically and have it, continuously produce new content for you. Now, this is just one component of our larger, modern content strategy system, but it's built on the same principles. And for those who are new and haven't seen this before, we really think about content as a system that is constantly working. It's looking at interviews you're having, it's looking at webinars you're producing, it's looking at past performing content, it's looking at sales calls, it looks at what other people are doing in the space, competitors or creators, what is happening in industry news, what is happening on Reddit, right? This is a constant agent that is always looking for new content ideas. And so we're pulling that in to then filter it through the lens of our company and our brand, right? Does it make sense to for me to be talking about this? Would our ICP get value out of this? Is it benefiting their jobs to be done? Is it aligned with our perspective? Then we then think about, okay, where does this best show up? What kind of format does this show up? And then it flags if we need to, pull in, more interviews or do additional research to make it happen, and then gets added to a bank. And it's essentially, a larger version of what we're talking about today, although we're going to manually drop in that transcript. But it's the same exact kind of pre-processing step. And so we're going to go through the session today, do a live build in Claude Cowork. And yeah, happy to answer questions along the way. And yeah, let's dive into it. Awesome. So let's talk about workflows in general. So workflows have three components, three stages. You have a series of inputs. Then those move into the processing and the actual workflow engine, the agent working. And the agent in this scenario is going to be mining for what we said. And so it's not inventing anything, right? That's the issue that people fall into with content production with AI is either it doesn't sound like you or it's talking about things that aren't really relevant to you, the story, and a lot of times it hallucinates and makes things up. And so it's going to take that transcript, it's going to look through it, it's going to understand, how we speak from the sample of content we've already created. It's going to then reshape that idea into multiple platforms, and then it's going to save an output there. In that output, this is the third part of the process. We will have a week of drafts, one idea that is native per platform, and this will be in the repurposing skill, and it should be ready in about 10 minutes. And so what we'll do is once we build this and it works end to end once, we will then set it up on a scheduled routine to run every week. And so what you can do is, if you want to keep it running manual, you can drop in a new transcript and it will run for you. Or once we build it into a schedule, it will run through the process end to end. Also, for joining this session today, everyone will get access to the working files that we are using. These will be sent after for you to download yourself. But I also want to explain the concepts the same way where, you know, you can build these yourself and modify them for what you're actually trying to do. I really like to try to educate people on the core concepts versus just specific applications, because once you get the hang of how these systems work, and that's why I like to break things down in inputs, process, and output, is because these workflows should be tailored to you specifically. And so, really trying to understand the core concepts here. And please ask questions if you're trying to think about this for something that you're trying to solve specifically and drop it in below. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to Claude. Now, important thing here is to be using Claude on your desktop. And what you'll see here when you open a new Claude, they've changed the layout. So it is now here, and you can toggle between chat and cowork. Please make sure that you are in cowork because what we need to do is we need to go in and select a folder. You can see our operating system here, workshops, sessions. You can see I'm actually coming in and selecting a project folder. This is exactly the same folder that you will get access to after this. And so what it's able to do is actually write and create documents on my local machine. Now, why is this helpful? Well, it allows it to have more access to tools on your computer. And so if you're only working on Claude Chat, you're limited to the amount of tools and what functionality it allows. On Claude Cowork, you're then writing files to your desktop and it's able to create more complicated tasks and have more functionality. And so I am going to come here to that one I already started. And essentially what I did is I just said, what do I have in my starter project, right? And this is more for demonstration purposes to just show you kind of what exists in this starter project. But you can see we have a brief, which these are mostly just templates now. And you can see this is a brief. So this is going to be how it is extracting what is in that input transcript. So whether that's a sales call, whether that's a webinar, whether that's a YouTube transcript. And this is the brief that it will kind of analyze through. So just a template for now. And you can modify that to your needs specifically. Here is a voice reference guide. So this is how it's going to know how to write in my voice. And then it created a folder where we're going to drop all of our transcripts. Additionally, we have some brand guides and then some reusable prompts. So extract to brief, analyze to voice, create platform native drafts, saves as a skill. So this is just to show you kind of what is in this folder already. But what we're going to do is we're going to tell it exactly what we want it to accomplish so that we can have it use this file in this folder as stated. So the first thing we need to do is we need to give it a example of our own content to know how we write for different platforms. Now, what I would do is I would go my blog and pull examples of my blog articles. I would go to my newsletter and pull examples of my newsletter, and then go to my LinkedIn content and pull examples there and drop them all into this folder to give it references for the voice guide. So, what I'm going to say is here are a few examples of my actual writing style to use to create a voice guide. Yes, it looks like we have a great question. If you already have a predefined voice doc or system prompt for how you write and what your company is, just drop that in. No need to recreate this. This is just if you don't have one already. I started, I used to start sessions assuming that most people had these already, but have learned that a lot of people haven't been able to actually create these successfully before. But yes, what we call it is a single source of truth, where it is everything about our company, what we do, and what we create. And I'm actually going to drop that in here as an example. But if you don't have all of this already, all you need to do is have it analyze your website, drop in articles, drop in your social content, etc., to create it for you. So now it's going to take a look through, and you can see it's doing some coding. Right? It is pulled up a terminal. It has run a bash command. This is only possible in Claude Cowork. You would not be able to accomplish that same style of task in Claude Chat. And so this is why we use Claude Cowork, so it can use more advanced skills and do more advanced steps. But I don't need to know how to do it whatsoever. It's modifying here. And so I'm just going to tell it to use this single source of truth versus pulling specific posts. Now, this is just some preliminary work, right? This is just saying this is context of who I am. This is context of how I write. And so then when we pull in a transcript, it understands and has a little bit more knowledge and understanding of who I am and what I talk about. And so it can go through that transcript with that lens. You can see that it actually even already knows. It says, hey, the next step in this workflow is paste in a transcript. Do you have a transcript ready to drop in, or should we hold from there now? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to a transcript that I did recently from one of my interviews, and I'm going to paste it in and say, here is a transcript. Great. So this is a research interview that I was conducting the other week. But again, I want to open your eyes that this can be a sales call. This can be a YouTube transcript. This can be any long form of content, an audio recording, an interview that you're having in person, right? Like anything that has a lot of information in it that could potentially be cut down to multiple pieces of content. Again, our best use case for this is webinars or these live workshops, because there's just so much information that comes up that you just forget that there's good content ideas in here. Something that if we have time at the end, I'll show you is because I have Circleback connected, which records all of my calls. In this routine, I'll probably have it look at Circleback every week and run this same kind of process. But we'll get to that a little bit later. So what this is doing is it's reading, it is markdown file. I don't know, I can't open this. It is reading this markdown file, and it is already predetermined or written its own prompt of what it needs to do. Because what I've done here is I've just told it what the outcome is, right? I've told it what I need. I need every week, I need you to pull out ideas from this long transcript. And so it knows what it should be following, or it makes its own prompts to accomplish that goal. I see so many people on the internet talking about prompting and like, how do you write a good prompt and what are the best prompts? And yes, On a very fine level, the nuance of, prompts can be improved upon, but the only way you should be working with Claude Cowork and Claude in general right now is by telling it the outcome that you want and let it determine and clarify on how to get you there. So, transcript saved in mind. We can pull that up. 7 points, three quotable lines, a contrarian claim. Perfect. So it is probably here. So you can see it found and extracted all of these different ideas that we talked about in this conversation. And so what it will do is now saying ready for move two, which is ready for the voice or reshape into platform drafts. So because it knows what's next, I'm going to say, yep, ready to move to two. And essentially, as we're running this process, we want to be giving feedback. So something that we could have done is, we could say, hey, we don't really like, these three quotable lines, you know, quote one and quote three are quite similar. So maybe I give it some feedback and I say, make sure that all quotes stand alone and aren't repetitive. So then what it did was it came in and it read my voice guide and it put it in and it wrote a post based off of my voice from the context of that interview. So that's just one example that it's showing us here. Again, let's give it some feedback. So Sia told her team something at the last board meeting that stuck with me. Everybody, what term looked like. All here's how she got them. Okay, so we're seeing this is showing a pattern of three staccato sentences. That's a band writing rule. Also, the main point, main takeaway is not very clear. Let's give it a stronger callback to the hook at the end. Okay, so I'm giving it some feedback that it will then write into the voice markdown file, which means it will get better or closer to an output on the next time. And so as we're building this process, again, it's very much a give and take. But the idea is you do that so that once you have an output that you're happy with, you bake that into the rules so it, gets better on the next time. Cool. This is better. Yes, move to move three and update that, update the rules so it's closer next time. So you can see I'm delegating this work or I'm explaining what I want very specifically, as I would training an employee or working with someone. Now, this whole kind of idea of this content strategy, this same workflow is how we are able to produce higher quality content at scale. But you need the human component, right? You have to know what a good LinkedIn post looks like. And that level of taste is something that you can't train AI. Knowing what good looks like, because it will get you an output. But knowing whether it's an exceptional output, a mediocre output, or a bad output, it's not going to know the difference unless you either train it a lot and you build up that knowledge over time. Again, just like we do, we learn, we improve. Or if you always have that kind of human component. So you can see it's coming in, it's reading step three. It's looking at my voice. Again, it's able to do this because we have access to Claude Cowork. And if we go into the starter project, all of these files are actually being added to. So all of this is being added there. And so again, once we build it locally, then we deploy it to the cloud and then it can run. Looks like we have a comment. Raby, tell me if I'm saying that incorrectly, but we are giving it guidelines. We have this voice markdown file that we gave it rules on how we write. We actually didn't give it the rules. We gave it examples of what our writing looks like for different platforms. And then from there, it came up with rules on how I write. And you can see because I gave it feedback, lessons from live edits on this date. We are banning staccato triplets. State the takeaway, don't let it trail off. I think that's the biggest component that most LinkedIn posts do when people are writing with AI. You kind of never land the plane with the point. It's like people will write good hooks and you state something contrarian or offer this perspective or state this idea. And then you add some supporting and then it just kind of like, fizzles out. And so something that's very important is kind of landing that plane, making it clear what your point actually is. What are you trying to say? And doing that in the most straightforward way possible is what you're looking to do. So you can see it then output a LinkedIn, an X post, and a newsletter. Now, let's give it some feedback. So our newsletters are typically 800 to 1,000 words and offer additional resources that are relevant to our ICP. Be sure to include those. And then what I'm going to, I'm actually going to paste in a example newsletter that we wrote recently. We publish these every week, and I'm just logging in off the side here so I can pull one of our recent ones and give it specific examples of what our actual newsletters look like. Okay, I'm having issues logging in over here. We'll just give it feedback here, and then it will update. And so again, I'm giving it feedback. I'm dialing it in. And so you want to run through this process once. So the next thing that we will do is, this will produce them every week. The next question is, well, where do they go, right? Where do we store all of this? You can store them a few different places. You can store them to your local machine as just will live in markdown files. Or you can send them to a, CMS or content management system like Notion. You can send them directly to a scheduling tool. So, we use and are big fans of Ordinal, or, your newsletter could be on Substack or Beehive or what have you. And then the next thing is, really just trying to determine where you want those to be posting. So as this is going, you can see it's updating rules in the repurpose markdown file, right? This is the prompt essentially. And you can see it's given it, this third step is reshape one idea per platform, produce 3 native drafts, same source material, different angle for each. LinkedIn, 180 to 220 words, Threads, newsletter. You can see it's updated what we've given it. And what I love about this is this becomes, the single source of truth. And you can see this is much stronger. Again, I would probably, give it some feedback here, but this is much, much closer. And what you can do is, right, maybe you have very specific detailed guidance on how to create effective LinkedIn post or a newsletter, right? Maybe you probably need more detailed and more specifics than just what is on this short little paragraph. And so what you can do is you can create a markdown file of like how to write a newsletter, how we write a newsletter. And then you can just tell it to reference this. So maybe I have a create an expansive guide on how we write newsletters. That is its own markdown file. Reference it here so it has full context, right? So maybe we have this already, but I'm just telling it to make a more detailed file that it can say, all right, as it's creating the newsletter, it's going to go reference this additional file to produce. We have a strong question here in the chat, which I will answer in a second. Thank you, Heidi, for that. But one thing I want to touch on is the idea of codifying and documenting your best practices, right? Documenting how to create a newsletter, documenting how to create an X thread, documenting how to create a LinkedIn post will pay off so much over time because A, you will be consistent, and B, it will continuously learn and get better over time, and you can use it across different things, right? So we're going to create this for this one specific workflow, but the next time I have a workflow that creates a newsletter, it can pull in this same article. Okay, ID. How can this work if I'm trying to get other team members to take over our content generation? You have some good things. That being said, it's all been via Claude because I haven't experimented with Cowork yet. That's my big part of the gap. So I set all those files in the process. Claude. Great question. Sharing is a massive constraint that it seems like Claude is working tirelessly to figure out. We have a suggestion of Lisa that GitHub is a great use case for this, which it is. But as soon as you get into the GitHub world, it starts to feel a little bit technical. Well, that is why we have something called plugins. These are a great way to share specific sets of skills. So if this workflow is a specific skill, you could package all this as a skill and then move it into, a shareable session. You also can upload these to GitHub, which is just a folder system, right? I'm working off my local folder, but you can just push them to GitHub, which is a public folder that your team can all have access to. They just need to download it to their local machine and run it the same way that you are. So, showing this, you can see we now created this more detailed newsletter guide. And so, as it is creating this, so now we have a full complete system. We've done the run. I put in a transcript. It did the processing. It looked at it from our point of view, our perspective, and then it gave me 3 outputs based off of our actual rules. The last 2 things we need to do is make this happen automatically, so I never have to think about it again. And then I want to automatically feed in my transcripts from Circleback. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this out and say, I want to make this a recurring routine that happens every Friday to create content for the following week. And you are going to look at my Circleback with the MCP connector and use that to extract interesting content ideas that came from real conversations I was having, either sales conversations or external. You can probably ignore internal conversations. And if we're talking about anything client specific, just make sure to anonymize it. So don't reference specific people by name or specific brands. Talk about their, what type of individual they are instead. You can see I mostly dictate to my computer using my microphone and a tool called WhisperFlow. It's very helpful and saves me a whole lot of time. So this is the last component. And what it's going to do, and what I've told it to do is say, all right, use one of these connectors, which is my Circleback. Look at my last calls. That replaces the input of the transcript. So every week it's going to pull all of the notes from there, run through the system, produce content, and then publish it automatically every Friday. Something also that I have a feeling that Claude is going to continue to lean into is their artifacts. They have made these, they're very much just like HTML at the moment, but are shareable files that have, their own public URL. And so my assumption is that one way they're going to solve being able to share things across teams is by using artifacts more. So, right, this skill can live as a specific artifact versus being a markdown file that you have to share outside of Slack. I'm curious if anyone has found any workarounds of how to do this as well, but this is our best bet. We've built out an entire operating system in GitHub, which works well for, smaller teams. But at scale, it's a little bit harder to keep track of version management and things like that. So, as as Claude wants to continue to be more integrated and work with and be more compelling on an enterprise level, they're going to have to figure out a better way to share things across organizations because right now it is one of their kind of current setbacks. But to be fair, no one else has really solved it. The same kind of issue persists with ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs. While we let this load and finish, feel free to drop any questions if there is something related to content repurposing or content ops that you are trying to figure out on your own. Feel free to drop it in and I can cover it or answer the question for you. But I also want to talk about AI search because this is something that we help teams accomplish as well. How do you get companies to rank up? How do you be the voice when people go and ask, who is the best content agency for B2B SaaS? We want Catalyst showing up number one. And so what we do is we help our companies show up across the board. And the way we do this is by running them through our free audit tool, which you can get access to on our website. And on there, it will tell you exactly what you need to do to rank. And we even give you some free downloads of ways you can build some kind of your first content system to help publishing content. But publishing content is not enough. You need to be working on offsite and you need to be presenting net new information as well. And so you can run your own free test on our site. I'm putting up the link here for everyone to take a look at. If you do that, it will tell you exactly what you need to do to rank above your competitors. So we now have this skill created and you can see weekly content source. It tells you exactly what it's going to do and the instructions that it is going to follow. Now we're going to run a test here. I always recommend running a test once it's in a scheduled task. You can see without me doing anything, this will just run on July 31st at 8 a.m. and it will go through the same steps that we walked it through today with the feedback that I already provided it. And so this now will take one long session, or in this example, a series of calls that I had during the week and try to find good content ideas that come from it. Now, what's cool about this is, you know, even if I don't auto publish these, Friday afternoon or over the weekend or Monday morning when I do all of my content, I have all these great ideas already extracted and I don't have to try to recall all the things I'm already talking about. And I'm not actually producing net new content. All I'm doing is taking things I'm already talking about, real situations that already happened, and turning that into content, which is outperforming on LinkedIn and Twitter as a content format already, right? AI can't have lived experiences. And so the content that is performing well is people talking about an experience that they actually had. So this becomes a very efficient way to repurpose content. And we can modify these instructions to not only look at Circle Back as the source, but include my YouTube video, trending news, right? We can keep building this system up with the same kind of bones where we just think about what are the inputs. I'll pull this up again. What are the inputs? One real transcript, but this can be sales calls, YouTube videos, customer competitive, top performing content that can then go into the system. And every week I have so much content from all these different sources that, become information or posts that I can post on my account. Looks like we have a finished run here, but I want to turn it over to any questions of anyone in the audience of things I can answer for them specifically. Okay, that's fine. All right, so here we are. Let's pull up this output. So these came from real calls, pulling from July 25th. So it's pulling from this week. Mid-market SaaS platform, had a power customer. This is great. Why it's interesting. These are great ideas. Awesome. So you can see these are some really great content ideas that come through and it even ranks them by priority. We got two good ones from this one call. Yes, Tom, we will be sharing all of the files that we created today and all of the prompts and reference files that we talked about. Those will go out in an email shortly after this, and you can always find more of them on our website. This is what the AI audit tool looks like, by the way. If you come in here, just enter your information and hit run, you'll get that full thing. But if you go to resources, you can see You can see all of the playbooks that we've created. Um, why is this not? Oh, do you want me to move it to articles? There you go. So you can find them all here that you can access and download the reference files from previous sessions as well as some prompt packs. So, getting actual, this is one for an AI agent writing proposal. You can get them all with access here. So, thank you guys so much. This has been really great. I hope to see you guys in future sessions. We run these twice a week. On Tuesday, we do live builds. On Thursdays, we talk through a little bit more about thought process and innovation and how people are ranking on AI. And yeah, hope to see you guys in future sessions. Thank you guys so much.